Welcome back to Take Two, presented by LeftRightPolitics.com, a discussion of the times and current events. I'm your host, Richard Nelson, and I'm joined as always by Adam Matlack and Mike Pomerantz. Today, let's talk current events. As we experience a racial awakening in our country, is it time to talk about mainstream anti-Semitism in America?
Well, if you're not aware of some of the things that have been said by Deshaun Jackson and some of his supporters, it's pretty clear that there's people in this country and beyond, and we already know there's significant contingent of people on the planet who are openly anti-Semitic. The population has been marginalized for thousands of years across countless cultures, and regardless, and this is what I want to get out, regardless of their socioeconomic status, regardless of how they're perceived, and as I mean, like the Jewish community as a whole is perceived as successful, and some of that begets this idea that they're trying to take over the world and trying to propagate all these negative things. It speaks to a bigger problem, and it's the problem that we're talking about in this country now, which is collectivism. It's treating groups differently because they're part of a supposed group. And I truly believe it's part of, or should be part of, the conversation when Black Lives Matter is talking. If you're talking about the idea that I want racial equality, I want equality, I want fair, I don't want marginal, I want to be not marginalized like my grandparents were, like my parents were, like I have been. This isn't something that just works for you. I understand you can talk about you, and I want to hear it. I want to listen, and I want to understand about what you've gone through and your perspective. But the idea here that we're just leaving some of these really terrible thoughts and that are being voiced. I mean, look, Farrakhan has been in the news, and he's still got a platform, and people still shake his hand, and the dude calls Jews termites constantly. I mean, I don't know what to say other than the guy he's pathetic as a person, and people still associate with the guy. And we're not trying to cancel him. And people are fine with it seems, because, well, I guess they're kind of successful. So here's the thing. If you care about marginalized groups or amarginalized groups, you should care about all of them. And it's part of the same conversation. It truly is. When we've got people in this country who do not treat individuals as individuals for their own merit and their own success and their own character, and instead treat them as a Jew or a black man or a white man or whatever, or a woman, this is the wrong take, because it's the same problem across the board. So I believe it has to be talked about, and it should be. I don't think it will. It won't be.
I have so many reactions to what you just said, and I want to kind of go through these things a little bit at a time. But I think the most important thing that I got out of what you just offered on this topic is that, I'm trying to think of a better word than cult, but I mean, if I could be in a cult, it would be the cult of me, and it would just be a cult where everyone was celebrating only the things that made them absolutely unique, the things that they could do that no one else could do, the things that they thought, the ideas that they had, the way that they presented themselves, whether it's through their clothes or their facial hair, all the things about yourself that you can control and present without too much effort. I mean, I think we've had some weird pigmentation talks, maybe off camera, but I love the idea of expressiveness and the way it helps us not only mine the depths of who we are personally, but then to sort of share that very unique spirit with everyone else. And that is all about individuality that exists outside of these generalizations. You're Black, you're Jewish, you're white, you're from Texas, all these things that really just oversimplify people, and they act as a shorthand way to basically take us off the hook from having to engage in that more richly detailed inquiry into who's on the other side of our, communicating moment. That being said, I also can turn the lens around and look at this through the view of history. And, as a Jewish person, I learned a lot about the history of oppression of the Jews. I have also learned how the systematic anti-Semitism continues. And to the extent that Deshaun Jackson, who is an incredibly gifted football player, playing for my team, the Eagles, although not on the Super Bowl team, but talk about that another time. But I mean, I want him to succeed. I don't want him to be canceled. But I'm just at a loss. I'm at a loss because, you think about it, or at least talked about it momentarily, as just kind of these two phenomena where one is very important, but it's being sort of magnified, and the other, which is also very important, is being marginalized. The problem with Deshaun is that he's like doing both of those things at the same time. He's like, the Black man is having all these problems because of the Jews.
Yep.
And that is like Trump level divisiveness. It's the kind of thing where it's like, when we're in a moment of thinking, and every thoughtful person you talk to would say this: I wish we could come together. I wish we could have more civil conversation. But man, when you say all this stuff you're seeing, the George Floyd, the Black Lives Matter, is because of the Jews, you're really gonna put the brakes on this kind of coming together thing we're hoping will happen. So it made me incredibly sad with that. Also, when I first started to get out of my bubble of privilege and hang out with Black people, they were like, oh, you're Jewish, you're cool, you're one of our guys. And I loved that. That made me feel like I was in a special club. So I'm aware of how painful Deshaun's sharing those comments are. But I also feel like it's more important for us to focus how he's wrong about his issue, which is the oppression of African Americans in the United States. And, even after he apologized, he followed up with some comments saying, like, why does the Black man always have to apologize for everything he says? And that put me in mind of what you're saying. Like, you're not being forced to apologize because you're Black. You're being forced to apologize because you're wrong.
Exactly.
And if he doesn't take that message to heart, all this is just a friggin' waste of time. Now, again, I don't want him to be canceled. I don't even know what the canceling is. Like, you talk about Farrakhan. I don't want Farrakhan to be canceled. If you take the Jewish stuff out of Farrakhan, which is like trying to take the butter out of the scrambled eggs after you served them, okay, you can't do it. But if you did take the Jewish stuff out of Farrakhan, have a lot of positivity about, like, help people rise. I mean, he's an incredible speaker. I have been at times under the spell of his oratory. So, I don't want him to be canceled. I just think we have to start to look at this stuff with a little more complexity, understand there's good and bad in both places. On the issue of systematic anti-Semitism, it's there, but it's not nearly as bad. And to take time to talk about that is to take time away and to minimize the plight of African Americans in this country, which has been just minimized so terribly for so long that I can wait. I don't want to wait until there's another synagogue shooting like there was in Pittsburgh. I don't want to wait until there's some calamity that causes all the Jewish people to, riot in the streets. But I do want to wait a little while this race reckoning is continuing to happen. It's still very fresh. There's still demonstrations going on every day. And I think this is a very important message that needs to continue to be heard as we lead up to, I guess, the election, which is our next pivot point in culture until something else terrible happens before.
this is a cultural problem. It's at the heart of how people are being raised, what they're being taught, what they believe. Deshaun seems to believe these things.
It does.
Not he read a thing, was like, that makes sense. No. He believes, it seems. I don't want to speak exactly for him, but it certainly seems as though he believes that the Jewish man is trying to take over the world, that there's this plan of all this stuff, and that he's been and this is part of the boogeyman of the systematic oppression, is that it's the Jews, it's those dirty Jews that have gotten into the government and ruined this whole situation and poisoned the well. Look, this is a different paragraph of the same book. I mean, really, it truly is. If we want to solve a lot of the problems when it comes to oppression of people, it will only truly be solved when the story of our culture changes. And the story that's what our culture is a story. And we tell stories to other people, and it's this moving, ever evolving, line by line of truth and falsehoods and misunderstandings and love and hate and all these things. And it's not as complex as, oh well, we need to talk about this group, we need to talk about this. No. We need to being united is something beyond. You don't sit there and be like, well, here, let's unite with this group. No. Uniting is everybody. It's everybody coming together, culturally changing, shifting how we view groups and shifting how we treat people. You cannot, and it's you mentioned it, you lose all credibility, and he did. Instantly he said it. Everything he said, and Wilbon, to his credit, did this right, and there was a lot of people who responded with this correctly, and many of them African Americans who work with Jewish people, and I mean, obviously have seen both sides. Look, you cannot say the things he said and believe any shred of them and then have any credibility talking about your movement and the idea that, oh, well, blacks are marginalized here and this is not okay, while doing it at the same time. It's like you were saying, I mean, you used magnifying over here, and then he's magnifying all the wrong, all the mistruth, all the inherently almost evil stuff to believe about this group, while saying, look at what has happened to this group. This isn't, I don't want to sit here and say that this is what's wrong with the BLM, because it's not. I'm treating Deshaun as an individual here. However, I know that there are other people who feel the same way. Heck, people have come up and spoken in defense of him and in defense of what he has said. And there's no defending it. And so from my side of things, it shows us that if we wait to have this conversation, it really does spur unity. It doesn't create unity. It creates more division. It needs to be a totality conversation. It has to be everything. It can't be we're gonna deal with this one wrong. We're gonna leave all these other wrongs, and we're gonna eradicate. That's not how that works. You don't get one. I have cancer and I've got 6 lymph nodes and I'm only gonna remove one of them. I'm gonna die. So we need to remove all of it, or just accept it and die. So this is my take.
Well, it's a great illustration. I mean, that's like it definitely hits home when you describe it that way. I would ask if I guess what I'm thinking is that there's almost an economic comparison to be made, where if we start by saying that we're going to give money to the richest people and they're going to do the right thing with it, compared to we're going to cancel debt and provide stimulus to the weakest people, and then it will flow up to the benefit of those who are in a better economic position. I think the idea of trying to put the kaleidoscope of injustices into one goal of equality makes sense. But it feels like it's more like hoping that everyone will kind of get what they need, because in the sort of fantasy cult of the individual that I imagine, everyone's needs are a little different. We gravitate towards people who we share some needs with, but really everybody is different in that model. And I think that's an accurate way to look at it. It may not be practical because you can't have a government or a system of redress for each individual. But it does seem to me that giving people a chance to say their piece and to find the people who tell a similar story, if not the same story, that is more akin to this idea of empowering from the bottom and causing the top to change from the bottom, from this pressure that if they don't, they lose that foundation, the foundation of labor, the foundation of population, tax base, all the kind of economic things that denote strength. Because the people who have the riches can't do it without the people underneath them. I guess I would just say that the emphasis on detail that we get with Black Lives Matter now does not make me as a Jewish person feel like I'm getting short shrift by not having my story told or my concerns addressed. I don't think it cheapens, or again, for Jewish people, it's an over generalization, but it is, there is an idea that there is like you're slightly further ahead on the progress march, and that although I'm not telling people to be happy with what you got and just close your mouth, but it's more of an emergency when you're seeing these videos of cops killing unarmed Black people over and over again. And I just think that if you're threatened as a Jewish person by that, not by, I'm threatened by what Deshaun Jackson says and what a little bit of what Mark Jackson said, but it's not the movement. The movement itself, I don't think threatens me. I think it empowers me that we're getting closer to that point where we can actually have societal change. I'm sorry that it's taken this to get there, but I'm not feeling like, what about my issues?
I'll just say that I think, sadly for me, is that as we continue to not answer the call and pick up, I mean, look, the answer here, in my opinion, if I'm marching down the street and I'm sitting there holding the banner of a marginalized group X, and there's people down on that street that I know have been marginalized, that are currently being marginalized, and I don't march with them in a united situation where I'm, hey man, you know what? You should bring your banner, and you should bring your banner, and you should bring your. That's what unity looks like, and that's what healing would look like, in my opinion, in this country. Not, okay, we're gonna go around the seesaw here, and it's you guys get to do it now, and then you guys, and then you gals, and then this, and then we're all back to our groups. That's not what unity looks like. That's not what healing looks like. And so I would just argue for, I would ask, as somebody who's perceived as to be not part of any group that's marginalized. That's me. Okay. I have no more, other than the fact, I guess I'm from Texas. But so I have no more, I've got white skin. I'm Irish English. I mean, there's terrible history of Irish in this country and mistreatment of them, but whatever. Let's just say I'm not one of those people. My priority isn't just one injustice. It's all. And it can't, and I cannot get on board with an idea of anything different.
All right, I'm stealing the last word. I just think it's too general. It reminds me of Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Coalition. even my good friends in the Formula One world, they're trying to do basically a marketing campaign, but it's like Black Lives Matter, Queer Lives Matter, first responders lives matter. And I feel like what happens when we take that all-encompassing approach is that it sort of paints with a broad brush and loses the detail of why these people think they have a legitimate grievance and why that's different from the perceived grievances which emanate from the White House and wherever else. And I think it's important to learn as much as is reasonably necessary to understand those specifics, as opposed to just being like, yeah, there's I mean, you could learn how to be, I mean, you already know, but if you didn't, I think you have the insight and the sort of the energy to learn that the issue can be resolved. It's almost like one-stop shopping. Look at the individual, judge everyone with their drawbacks and with their incredible traits, and figure out like how you're going to deal with this person on an individual basis, and just do that. Don't worry about the stereotypes. Don't worry about the groups. Don't worry about the identities that people glom onto. I think most people are looking for those shortcuts. They don't want to do the work. They're afraid, they're intimidated, so they go to the stereotypes. And that's why we need these very loud, dramatic moments so we can break through the stereotypes and see, oh, this is why people like this person, not that they're all the same, but people who share a little bit with this person, this is why they're upset. So that's it.
All right, that's all the time we have for this one. Thank you both for your time today. If you enjoyed our discussion, be sure to like and subscribe below, and we'd love to hear from you in the comments section. Thanks again, and we hope you join us for the next edition of Take Two, presented by leftrightpolitics.com.